Coming up next is Tim or Sharon. Perhaps one of the longest fought battles in the management of UX is, of course, over research. People say, we know our customer, or we did a survey last year, or that's not a statistically valid sample size. I guess that's one we hear a lot. I think we've all heard various versions of this kind of stuff. So next up is someone who I think frames the problem and the solutions very, very crisply. Tomer has led the user experience research effort for Google's online advertising management platform since 2008. And now he's going to help us get a leg up on getting that elusive buy-in for UX research. And he apparently is a Sox fan.
All right. So, yeah, recently I noticed that I should use, can you switch to my, yeah, I should use this form of saying winning. So, UX practitioners, researchers, and leaders are constantly looking for ways to get this buy-in from the stakeholders. And the reason is that they're trying, of course, they know that it informs design, it helps prioritize development, it helps shape product roadmaps, and it helps initiate company-wide change of direction sometimes. Many of them are frustrated and feel isolation because they need to deal with very difficult people who don't understand or don't respect the research process. And what I want to do today is share 5 stories and lessons learned based on my career. And I'm going to start immediately. This is a URL for you to ask questions. I'm using Google Moderator. This is the first time ever that someone is trying to use the internet during a presentation, so I hope it works. So Google Moderator, if you don't know, allows you to submit questions and allows everyone else who doesn't have a question to vote for questions. So you get me answer the questions that are most important for you. So please use that during the presentation. You're going to see the URL on the slide. Very briefly about myself, I work on a product called DFP, DoubleClick for Publishers. It's for managing online advertising for companies who have websites in which they have ad space to sell. In my spare 20% time, I'm supporting the Honeycomb project with research. I'm a senior vice president at the Sharon residence, and I also author, I currently author a book for Morgan Kaufman publishers called It's Our Research, Getting Stakeholder Buy-in for User Experience Research Projects. So yeah, something I wanted to show you, which is nice. I work in a company that is called Google. I heard that there are some problems. Today you can buy 2 Googles for $3.98 at the Home Depot. So let's jump into the first story. The first story happened when I was an in-house practitioner a while back, and I was experimenting with measuring UX metrics, and I generated very cool charts, I think. I wanted to believe. And there was this one software engineer that constantly poked holes in my presentation while I was giving it in front of the entire team. His main problem was that I was misrepresenting results, and I'm dramatizing the findings by using different tricks in my charts. And he said that I'm probably right, but I don't need to do that. And I think I'm being very gentle. He was really nasty. And I felt terrible. I was insulted. I didn't want to see this guy. I didn't want to work with him. I just, I was clearly a very young, inexperienced, unconfident practitioner. So I just completely ignored him for 2 months. And then I decided to, take a step back, reflect, and understand that I was doing the wrong thing. And I was looking for a way to turn things around. And what I did, not rocket science, what I did is I just asked him if he was willing to poke holes in my presentation privately before the team meeting. And he's happy to poke holes, so he agreed to do that, and we made this a habit. So this was excellent. Why? Because I got to get the feedback and improve my presentation. He got to poke holes. He was, satisfied. And most importantly, he felt appreciated because he got to see the results first. And we made this a habit. We did that each time when results of studies came in. I felt that I can do more with this guy. So when the right opportunity presented itself, I invited him to join me on a large international field study. And we worked on this together for a couple of months. And in one of the preparation meetings, he suddenly looked at me and said, wow, I wasn't realizing that research involves so many detail, methodology, and planning. And at this point, I knew that this person is becoming a champion for user experience research. So the lesson learned here is that there is a way to turn things around, even with difficult people. Having said that, I'm going to talk about the hostile stakeholder. The one that no matter what, nothing is going to turn them around. These people, I'm sure you work with these people. They are the ones that disregard research. They know better. They laugh at your sample size. They rather count on their intuition rather than on observed behavior. So to explain what I am sometimes, it's not a thing I'm doing every time. What I'm doing is I'm going to take an imaginary military conflict between the Blue Army and the Red Army. So let's assume that the Blue Army has 3 divisions. One in the east, one in the west, and one step back. And this is the reinforcement division. So the attack started, the 2 divisions are attacking, but the East Division is very successful, while the West Division is stuck. The Red Army is blocking the attack for the West Division, and now the general is thinking, where should they send reinforcement? So for that, I need you, Jay, mission control. If you are that general, where do you send reinforcement?
I wasn't looking at the first slide, I have to confess.
No first slide. Two forces attack.
Okay.
One is very successful. One is not.
So I'm saying
This is reinforced.
Successful, right?
You're sending it here.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. The art of war, if we ignore the irony for a second, is saying that the general should send reinforcement to the succeeding forces. Why is that? The reason is that if you send reinforcement to the succeeding forces, that changes everything for the Red Army. They need to take care of serious developments, dangerous developments with your succeeding forces, and they have to change things completely. If you're going to send reinforcement to the stuck division, the second division will probably get stuck even more. So how is that related to the hostile stakeholder? So what I'm doing with stakeholders is pretty much the same. I have, stakeholders that are very accepting of research. They are the successful division. And I have these hostile people that are not cooperating no matter what. So what I do, I leave these people alone. I leave them alone. You handle it by yourself. You're not getting research love. And I'm working even more. I'm sending my reinforcement. I'm working even more with the stakeholders that accept research. And I didn't do that. I've been working in the field as a researcher for 12 years now. I think I did that 3 times. And as opposed to the battlefield, which things change in a couple of days, with hostile stakeholders, it takes about a year for them to come back. And when they do, I accept them with open arms and bring them back to the research highway. So that's the second story. Third story, I call it, and any people who speak the Queen's language here, of course, I think there is at least one. You never walk alone. And what I want to say by that is that I'm asking the question of when is the best time to collaborate with stakeholders when you talk about research. And to demonstrate that, I'm using a chart. And I'll explain it. So these are the phases of a typical research project. And red means that you don't collaborate with stakeholders in that stage. Green means that you do. And this is the level of engagement, of uptake of research by stakeholders. So let's take the extremes. If you want to be extremely successful, you want your stakeholders to be fully engaged with research, you need to collaborate in each and every step of the research. If you want to completely fail, you do research for research and not for stakeholders. Don't involve them at all. Don't even tell them about it, and fail completely. Usually associated with academia. Yeah, I know. The gray areas are when most people are. So if you want to be somewhat successful, you should involve them in planning, don't involve them in recruiting, execution, and analysis, and show them the report and follow up, and so on and so forth. So this is a good chart for you to evaluate how much uptake and consumption you have in your organization. So ask yourself, what is the level of uptake you usually have? And can you make it better or change it somehow? The next story is about what happened when the only person who knew what UX was left the company. So I was hired by a mature startup with about 200 people by the CEO. He was the only person who knew what UX was, very appreciative of research, very understanding, and I loved the day I joined the company. 4 weeks into my new job, I learned 2 disturbing facts. One is that out of the 200 people who worked there, he was the only person that knew what I was doing and why I was hired. And the second disturbing fact is that he announced he was leaving. So I'll make a long story short. I stayed there, everything was fine. And my point is that the one thing that helped me thrive and survive there are the meetings that I attended, the meetings that I initiated, and the meetings that I avoided. So, and I want to tell you about these meetings. So, meetings I initiated were meetings with senior product managers or engineering leaders. Probably I did and still do that every month or quarter. This is a conversation, usually 30 minutes, not more, in which I tried to understand what questions are bothering them. And for all of these meetings that I'm going to talk about, I'm trying to identify opportunities for research. The second meeting that I initiated were meetings with one level down, the product managers or maybe the team leads, the engineering team leads. And with them, what I'm trying to do is just, the day-to-day research needs. Who we're going to recruit, when is the study going to happen, and things like that. The second type of meetings are meetings that I attend. I'm not saying a word, I'm staying quiet, I'm just listening. These are product management meetings, engineering team meetings, or engineering leadership meetings. In most cases, I don't understand a lot of what they're talking about, but it's important for me to be there so they can see my face. It's important for me to be there because I'm starting to understand the language they're talking. It's important for me because I understand the relationships between people in the room, and I know what I should suggest to whom. And the third type of meetings are meetings that I'm either completely avoiding or meetings that I'm being very careful with. So I should be careful here. Meetings I avoid, meetings I avoid are meetings where a bunch of well-paid non-UX people are criticizing designs. It happens a lot. I'm sure you know these meetings. I get so annoyed that I can't be there. I'm a person who prefers observed behavior of users rather than opinions of people who don't understand design. Although I acknowledge the fact that sometimes you hear good feedback, but I try to avoid these meetings. And at least at Google, we don't have to show up to each and every meeting. Meetings I'm being careful with are meetings where, and I'm sure you all attended these, the company-wide vision, the one time a year that the CEO is describing the vision for the next year or quarter or whatever. Why I'm being careful with that? If you sit back and listen to strategy and think that this is how you're going to identify research opportunities, you are dead wrong. It's too late when you hear that. If you want to think big, you are the one that should help set this strategy with your research. So I'm being very careful with these meetings and what's going on there. Last story, and the one I personally really like. When stakeholders join you or observe you moderate studies, whether field study or lab study or whatever, it could be extremely overwhelming for them. A lot of things are happening. Sometimes they're stressed because this is their baby that's being tested. Users discuss what they did. Users actually use the product. So a lot of stress is involved, that a lot of information is passing by. So what I'm doing when I moderate sessions in which stakeholders join me, or I know they observe from far away or in the next room, I'm doing something that I call coloring the experience for them. And I learned the term when I was a young cadet in the Air Force Academy in Israel. This is the plane I flew. This is not me in the picture. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. So I was 17. I was extremely ambitious. I thought I'm going to be a pilot. And it took about 3 months from the day I was drafted until I was airborne with this small plane. And during these 3 months, we learned everything we could about the plane, the systems and everything, and about the maneuvers we are expected to demonstrate in the air. So when the time to fly came, it took about 3 weeks. Every morning we had 1 hour in the air, and the instructor was sitting behind us in the plane, and he was, telling us what to do, and we needed to demonstrate our performance. About 90% of the people were to be screened out of the academy, including myself, and I demonstrated some high performance there. And the purpose is not to see if you're going to be. It's not to teach you how to fly. It's to see if you have the potential of becoming a great pilot. Because as you can imagine, the Israeli Air Force does not use these planes in war. So let's say we're in the air and the instructor is asking me to make a left turn. So, and I'm so stressed out and confused, and I'm making a right turn instead. So what I needed to do is to call my mistake out loud. So I would say, turn right instead of left, and just move on to the next maneuver. Now, during debrief on the ground, thankfully, we were analyzing our performance and mistakes. And the trick was that you vividly remembered your mistakes because you called them out loud. So, and this was called coloring your mistakes. So what I'm doing today with stakeholders during sessions is pretty much the same. And I color the experience for them in 3 different ways. 2 small ways and 1 big important one. The small way, the first one is with body language during the session. So if something important happens, I turn to the stakeholder. If they're in the room with me, I turn to them suddenly so they understand that something important is happening. Because you know that, with a blink of an eye or a 2-second lack of focus, they can miss the most important thing in a 1-hour session. Or if I know that this is being broadcasted to another room or location, I turn my head to the camera and wink or raise my eyebrow or something. Or I turn to the one-way mirror or things like that. Of course, this is all behind the back of the participants, so they don't get scared. The second way I'm coloring the experience is with written language during the session. So if I'm interviewing, a participant on the phone, or if it's a remote session and the stakeholders are with me in the same room, I use, a Post-it note or a piece of paper and show it to them. Let's say we talked about something. We had a very important research question, and it was just answered in front of our eyes. I'm writing something like important and putting that in front of their face. So that's how I color the experience with written language. The last one is probably the most important and effective one. I color the experience with spoken language after the session. So you probably all do that yourselves. When we're out of a field visit, immediately after that, in the train, in the street, in the park, wherever it is, we talk about what happened, because stakeholders sometimes see different things than what you see, than what you know is most important. So we talk about surprises, we talked about what we saw, we talked about what is it that we're going to ask tomorrow and things like that. I make sure that I tell them, the anecdote you just watched is not really important. What's important is this big thing that happened or that was said. So take good care and good notice of that instead of anecdotes. Same thing with lab studies. I just walk into the observation room immediately after the session, and I'm pretty much doing the same thing. These are all my stories. So remember the engineer that poked holes in my presentation, the way to use reinforcement, when is the best time to collaborate, what do you do, and which meetings you initiate, attend, participate, and avoid, and how to color the experience. A shameless plug for my book that is still due in a year. These stories that I just told you will be a part of the book. I'm collecting stories from all over the world, so if you have a terrible or a story about a terrible or a very successful engagement of stakeholders, please talk to me. I'm still collecting these stories. I have currently about 50 stories from all over the world, and if your story fits well, then I might use it. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm providing book statuses. One more important thing, and I'm being selfish here, we're recruiting for designers in the ads domain. So this is the area that brings money to Google. So if you're interested, we're always looking for great designers. And let's try the magic now. So if you have questions that you didn't submit, do it very quickly and vote for questions, and let's see what's going on there. Yes. Okay, it's working. So what are your views on the claim that having a sample size that is as low as 3 to 5 users is enough to identify, say, 80% of the critical issues? Do you do guerrilla user testing often? So I think that for the low-hanging fruit, 3 to 5 users is pretty much enough. I'm doing the same thing. Maybe not 3, but not less than 5. And I'm trying to, not highlight this as the first thing in my methodology slide in the presentation. It's not that I'm lying about it. It's just that, don't, used 5 users. And I do a guerrilla user testing, maybe not very often, but it depends on the situation. If you're looking for the smaller things, sometimes the maybe things that you want to be more confident about, then I'm using larger samples, maybe different methodologies. It's not that I'm doing a usability study or a lab study with 25 participants. I never do, because otherwise I wouldn't be here today. But we're doing maybe surveys or these online studies, remote studies, unmoderated studies. Let's see if it works. Yeah. What's the single biggest factor that determines buy-in? I would say, and it's going to sound weird, contribution. If you come to your stakeholders and they understand that you want to contribute, you don't want to do their job, you just want to make them heroes, and I'm referring especially to lead engineers and product managers, you should say that you are there to contribute, to help them do their job better. You're not looking for anything for yourself. That's what I think is the biggest factor that determines buy-in. All right, quantitative research. So quantitative research works like magic. It was said here before. Numbers do it for certain people. And seriously, sometimes you really need that. If you come back from a field study with 12 participants, and let's say 11 of them said that they're not using something or some kind of feature, are you really confident that this is what's happening? I would go to blogs and see what's happening with this feature to support this finding. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and then I'm not even going to consider that as a relevant finding. So yes, quantitative research is definitely worth it. It's a lot of work. You need a lot of cooperation with your team, especially the engineering team. But it's definitely helpful. And if you're not getting this help, you can measure things in lab studies. And I think we're going to hear about that right after the break. Aside from waiting until things change, is there a way to address complete buy-in blocked by budget or priorities? I would start small. I think I mentioned that to June. Where are you? I can't see you with all the lights. Yesterday, they didn't let me, but in a previous company, I really, really wanted to work on the application that everybody orders food in the company, and then show my benefit, my contribution there, and then everybody else would know. But they didn't let me do that. Yeah, but waiting until things change, I mean, no, I wouldn't wait. What does winning look like? I think we can see that on TV every day. When it goes wonderfully right. So I saw this question in advance, and I wanted, I thought about it a little bit, and I think I have like 10 answers to that question. So signs of engagement. Users are happier, research is consumed, Changes are made in design. Findings are long and lasting. Trust is established between you and your team. You're invited to important discussions. Teams want to work with you. Business decisions are made based on research. Product roadmaps are reshaped because of research. New products are born. Staffing is changed. People are allocated to take care of things that you find. And researchers are recognized with awards and just good words. So these are all signs that something is going very, very well. If you're not getting that, that's terribly wrong. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.